This is the 400-year judgment. Voices of the diaspora. We're returning the receipts. The Reverend Point Blank is in the building. Welcome to CHUCH. We just chillin'.
What you into, man?
Yeah, I just cop, man. You know, like, hey, dig it. I got something I want to lay on you. Dig it, man. You just take this and it's a brand new experience.
It ain't me, man.
The Dopamine did it.
I got a name they mispronounce, still I wear it like gold. From the map to the mouth, we've been carrying home. My auntie kept the recipe on a paper thin fold, salt in the stew and the truth that the river still knows. Suitcase stories, folded flags in the trunk with the scars. Every mile left a mark, every mark lit the stars. We don't fade, we translate every border, every song. If you hear my people speak, then you know where we belong. Hands up, call us back, we've been scattered, we've been tagged. Still the rhythm in the blood pulls the whole world in the bag.
All right, my brothers and sisters, this is the dopamine pivot. It's a master high. The people who use this drug can heal or it can hurt. And today we will see how certain drugs really work. Welcome to CHUCH and thanks for watching. I want to thank you for this fantastic time because what I'm about to share with you will heal or disrupt your mind. Drugs can make things good or bad, even sad. Now that depends on the substance that you have. When it comes to drugs, hell, I did a dopamine pivot. And it didn't take long for me. I soon knew I couldn't stop with it. I was addicted to this drug for a long time. I guess I was an addict because all the moves I made became instantly automatic. It's a craving that I have. I just don't even want to shake. And the effects of this drug controls every decision that I make. Hell, I'm hooked on this drug, family. And it's not a mistake. The drug is so powerful, I don't even want to take a break. You know this drug is deep in the brain where the cravings are born and breed. That's the hunger that moves in your brain. It starts to plant them seeds. In the depths of your heart, it can build up or it can deceive. The addict is walking in a world where the dark or light shadows lead, chasing a ghost just to justify that hunger's need. A dope addict will sell every treasure and cross every line for that simple hit, betraying all the ones he's supposed to love just to stay in that drug pit. The basal ganglia has been hijacked, and it won't let them quit. The reward system is broken, and that other fire is lit. The surge of the dopamine floods through the circuits of the brain, associating survival with substance causing change or excruciating pain. The receptors are turned way down and the spirit begins to feel drained, needing that drug just to keep a person feeling halfway sane. But the most powerful are truly addicts to progress and light. They wake up obsessed and they work all through the night. If you're moving in a positive direction, you should stay with it because a man that has purpose in his life is on the dopamine pivot. They cannot be stopped when they have this breakthrough in sight, using the dopamine loop to reach higher heights. Look at Imhotep building the pyramids stone after stone. He was hooked on the math and the secret of the unknown. Benjamin Banneker tracked the stars from his mental zone, mapping the heavens while his seeds of genius was sown. Lewis Latimer worked in the lab till the carbon was bright, addicted to perfecting the thread that would conquer the night. And Madam C.J. Walker took the grind to a whole nother level of height, using the dopamine pivot to win every industrial fight. The high is the same, whether seated in truth or lies. The spirit will soar or drop based on what's in your eyes. So feed the ambition to master the nine till you die, and let the obsession give you the power to fly. Success is itched, it's a master, it receives. Now by walking this path of the ancestors, you will always achieve. You reach every miracle that your heart can truly believe when you hijack the hunger and the seeds of impossibility that you can conceive. that you will and can achieve. Peace and love, enjoy your time. Now Mike and Mika, break it down and take out the rhymes.
I want you to think about maybe the most successful person you know.
Right, or even just the most successful figures in history.
Exactly, the real visionaries, the ones who pull all-nighters, the ones who seem to operate on just like an entirely different frequency than the rest of us.
Yeah, they just never seem to stop.
They don't. But what if I told you that the engine driving their success, like the literal neurological machinery inside their heads, is actually the exact same machinery that drives a substance addict?
It is wild to wrap your head around, but it's true. The craving, the obsession, the relentless pursuit, it is biologically identical.
Right, they just feed a totally different hunger.
Exactly. So today we are looking at this, essentially a grand unified theory of human drive.
Yeah, and we're pulling this from the research of Jay Johnson, who is also known as the Reverend Point Blank.
Right. He's a podcaster, a former pastor, globetrotter, and he compiled this phenomenal exploration called the Dopamine Pivot, hijacking the hunger for greatness.
Which is such a great title. And our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the biology of obsession based on his work.
Because the central premise here fundamentally changes how we view ambition. The human brain, honestly, it does not distinguish between the rush of a chemical substance and the rush of a massive breakthrough.
It just wants the rush, right? It just wants that hit. So we're going to look at how that biological craving works under the hood and how you can actually hijack that hunger to build something incredible.
But to do that, we have to start with a biology. Specifically, a region of the brain called the basal ganglia.
Okay, right, the basal ganglia. Walk us through that, because that's the core of all this.
Yeah, so the basal ganglia acts as the epicenter of positive motivation. In an evolutionary sense, it is the part of your brain that rewards you for doing things that keep you alive.
Like finding food.
Or exactly, finding food, or, connecting with your community. When you do those things, your basal ganglia releases dopamine.
And dopamine is basically that chemical messenger, right? It pulses through your nervous system and tells your body, hey, whatever you just did, that was fantastic for our survival.
Remember how to do it, and do it again. Exactly. That is the natural, healthy craving loop.
But when we talk about a destructive addiction, that natural system gets completely overrun, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Instead of a gradual, manageable release of dopamine like you get from eating a good meal, the brain is suddenly flooded with this massive, unnatural chemical surge.
Which creates that intense, euphoric high.
Right. And the brain, you have to remember, is just a biological machine trying to optimize your life. Yep. So it records this massive pleasure spike.
And it immediately categorizes that feeling as the ultimate survival need, prioritizing it above, like, food, water, or shelter.
Yes. But the brain is also remarkably adaptable. It literally cannot sustain that constant, overwhelming flood of neurochemicals.
You would burn out the neural circuitry, right?
Exactly. So to protect itself, it begins to adapt.
Yeah.
It reduces its own natural production of dopamine, and it physically turns down the volume of its dopamine receptors.
The brain literally becomes desensitized just to handle the flood.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because it really reminds me of a broken thermostat in a house.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, like you turn the heat up to 70 degrees, but the sensor is broken and barely registering the heat, so the room still feels absolutely freezing to you.
So you crank it to 80?
Then 90. But you're still shivering. In the brain, because those receptors have turned their sensitivity way, way down, your natural ability to feel normal pleasure is completely flatlined.
You feel lifeless. You feel physically depressed without the substance, so you are forced to consume more and more of it just to reach a baseline of normal.
Just to keep the lights on in the house, basically.
Right, because the baseline is permanently shifted. The brain now views this massive influx of dopamine as a non-negotiable matter of survival.
Which is why people caught in this loop will cross lines they never thought they would cross. They'll betray the people they love just to answer that biological demand.
It is arguably the most dangerous level of hunger a human being can experience.
But I want to push back on this a little bit. If this craving loop is purely a biological chemical reaction, like literally molecules binding to physical receptors in the brain, how can an abstract concept like purpose or building a legacy trigger the exact same physical machinery?
It's a great question.
Because one is a physical substance you are actively ingesting. The other is literally just an idea in your head.
Well, the thing is, the basal ganglia is essentially blind.
Blind? How do you mean?
It doesn't have a moral compass, and it doesn't categorize your inputs into good goals and bad habits. It only responds to what you repeatedly reward.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when you experience a win, even an entirely abstract one, like solving a complex math problem or, finishing a difficult project, your brain releases dopamine.
So if you train your brain to prioritize that specific feeling of achievement, you're firing up the exact same survival circuitry.
Precisely. Which brings us to the core of the source material.
Right. So what does this all mean for us? Because this is what psychologists refer to as functional addiction, or what the author calls the dopamine pivot.
The dopamine pivot, yes.
Yeah.
It's essentially taking that broken thermostat, ripping it out of the wall, and wiring it to heat a skyscraper instead of burning down your own house.
I love that. So when you focus that basal ganglia on healthy rewards like providing for your family or mastering a difficult craft, you construct this highly positive form of motivation.
You enter into what the research calls a loop of success. And it always starts with the craving.
Right. You set a vision that is so compelling, your brain actually starts to itch for it.
Yeah. And then comes the effort phase.
Yeah.
You sit down and do the hard grinding work. You isolate yourself from cheap distractions. So the only way to scratch that itch is through the work itself.
And when you finally crack the problem, you get the third step, which is the hit. You achieve a small win, and your brain releases that surge of dopamine.
Which brings us to the fourth and most critical phase, calibration.
Calibration.
Right. The brain gets that hit of progress, registers the euphoria, and says, we need more of that feeling to survive. But the same achievement won't give us the same high next time.
We need a bigger win.
Exactly.
I see this on a micro level all the time. Like whenever we publish a new deep dive, I catch myself constantly refreshing the analytics.
Oh, sure. Checking the downloads.
Yeah. I get a little bump of dopamine when the listener numbers go up, but like a month later, that exact same number of listeners feels totally normal, even a little disappointing. My brain demands a higher number to get that same initial rush.
You are experiencing the calibration phase perfectly. Your baseline shifted.
Yeah.
And for high achievers, this biological calibration is their secret weapon. We see individuals working 20-hour days, completely consumed by their mission, and they don't even look tired.
They are literally high on their own progress.
The work ceases to feel like labor. Their brain treats it as an absolute necessity for survival.
But wait, if someone is working 20-hour days just to chase their next brain chemical hit, is there a hidden danger to this kind of success addiction?
Oh, absolutely.
Because even if they aren't using a destructive substance, they're still trapped in a biological craving loop.
Right, and the author warns that balance is the primary risk here. A success addiction can very easily cause someone to neglect their physical health or, abandon their family if they are not deeply grounded.
Which makes sense. The source material talks about how destructive addiction feeds what it calls the lust of the flesh, right? It's short-term, chaotic, leads to betrayal.
Exactly. While a properly aligned success addiction must be fueled by faith and discipline, it has to be oriented toward long-term legacy.
Because the drive itself is just a neutral tool.
Exactly. If the purpose behind it isn't honest and sustainable, it will become destructive, regardless of how successful it looks on a balance sheet.
It is one thing to talk about this biological pivot in theory, but to prove it actually works, we really need to look at people who essentially weaponized it.
Yeah, because when you start viewing human achievement through this biological lens, history looks completely different.
You stop seeing natural-born geniuses and start seeing individuals who completely mastered their own craving loops.
And the research heavily highlights voices from the African diaspora here, with the primary case study being Lewis Latimer.
Man, Lewis Latimer, his story is incredible.
Latimer is the ultimate embodiment of someone with a neurological itch they simply could not scratch until the job was finished and cemented in history.
And he didn't start with a formal engineering degree or massive resources either. He started as an office boy at a patent law firm.
But he cultivated this massive craving for mastery.
He taught himself mechanical drawing simply by observing the professional draftsmen while he was running errands around the office.
Watching and learning.
Yeah. Then he entered the effort phase. He took his incredibly meager earnings, bought secondhand drafting tools, and stayed late into the night practicing his lines.
He kept grinding until his skills actually surpassed the professionals working at the firm.
You can literally see the loop calibrating in real time. He set the goal, put in the effort, and got the dopamine hit of mastering the tools.
And then the brain immediately demanded a bigger challenge. That craving ultimately led him into the room with Alexander Graham Bell.
Latimer was brought in to work on the patent drawings for the telephone. Talk about a high-stakes dopamine rush.
Oh, totally.
He had to work under extreme pressure, putting in profuse, grueling hours to finish these incredibly complex, highly technical drawings, and he had to do it just hours before a rival inventor filed a competing patent.
The adrenaline in that room must have been off the charts.
It had to be. But his real obsession, like the itch he is most famous for scratching, was the electric light bulb.
Yes, because while Thomas Edison and others in the field were completely satisfied with a bulb that lasted just a few hours before burning out, Latimer was obsessively focused on durability.
A few hours of light just wasn't a big enough hit for his calibrated brain.
No, not at all. He spent tireless hours in the lab, refining the carbonization process, fundamentally inventing the durable carbon filament that made electrical light practical for the entire world.
But even after changing the world, the itch wasn't satisfied. He didn't just invent the durable filament. He felt biologically compelled to formalize the knowledge.
Right, he stayed up late working to write the first comprehensive textbook on electric lighting.
You really have to understand his background to get why his loop was calibrated so high. His parents had escaped slavery. He wasn't just working for a paycheck or some momentary fame.
No.
For him, the feeling of being done only arrived when his legacy was totally undeniable. Which makes me wonder, for figures like Latimer, stopping wouldn't just be taking a break, would it?
How do you mean?
Well, based on the biology we discussed, it seems like taking a vacation would literally trigger a biological crash.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is that the brain begins to treat the mission as oxygen.
Wow.
If they are not creating, if they are not pushing the boundary forward, they neurologically feel like they are dying. The baseline has shifted so high that progress is the only thing that staves off the chemical depression of a dopamine deficit.
That is wild.
No.
And Latimer wasn't an isolated case. The text mentions Imhotep, the architect of the first Egyptian step pyramid.
Yes, Imhotep perfectly illustrates the calibration from the ordinary to the eternal.
Because before him, tombs were just flat structures called mastabas.
Right, but his brain chased the neurological hit of mathematical perfection. He wasn't just stacking stones, he was using geometry to trigger a dopamine release, constantly calibrating his designs higher and higher until he created the step pyramid.
We see the exact same underlying machinery in Madam C.J. Walker. She started by physically washing hair and selling her products door to door.
But the hit of a single sale calibrated her brain to demand more.
Yeah, she scaled that craving into a massive industrial grind, building an entire empire from scratch, opening factories, and employing thousands of women.
Or look at Benjamin Banneker, the self-taught mathematician and astronomer.
Right.
The dopamine hit of solving complex equations drove him to track the stars, map the heavens, and publish a massively influential astronomical almanac. He even built a striking wooden clock entirely from scratch just by calculating the gear ratios in his head.
They were all biologically addicted to the breakthrough.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established that the brain is essentially neutral soil. It doesn't care what you plant in it. You, the listener, are the gardener.
Yes, you make a choice every single day.
Right, a choice between planting seeds of destruction or planting seeds of legacy. But here's where it gets really interesting. How do we actually program our own basal ganglia to do this?
Well, the core philosophy underlying this biological reality is summarized by the author's phrase, "Your words and your deeds are your seeds."
Words and deeds are seeds.
Right. It introduces the concept of the mirror of karma. If your drive is fueled by honesty and purpose, it leads directly to elevation. But if that exact same relentless drive is fueled by lies and lust, it leads to the loudest, most destructive fall.
Let's break that down biologically, because honesty and purpose can sound a bit abstract. Why does honesty create a better dopamine loop than deception?
This is crucial. When you operate through deception, it requires a massive cognitive load. You have to constantly remember the lies you told, and you live with the underlying fear of discovery.
Oh, and fear releases stress hormones.
Exactly. That fear causes your amygdala to fire, flooding your brain with cortisol. Cortisol completely ruins and suppresses the clean dopamine hit of progress.
So honesty isn't just a moral suggestion, it is biologically efficient.
It keeps your neural pathways clean, allowing the dopamine from your achievements to process perfectly without the interference of stress hormones.
That is fascinating. So harnessing this clean, positive craving points us toward what the research calls mastering the 9, or the 9 columns.
Right. It is about taking that raw, addictive energy and structuring it to turn yourself into a machine for success.
If we look at how these historical figures operated, we can understand how these columns of mastery function in reality.
The first crucial pillar is the architecture of the craving. You have to define your goal so vividly and obsessively that your basal ganglia genuinely mistakes it for a survival need.
And the second is the crucible of effort. You must completely isolate your work environment from cheap, unearned dopamine hits like scrolling social media, so your brain is forced to seek its chemical reward exclusively through doing the hard work.
Yes. And a third pillar would be the calibration of legacy. You have to ensure the reward you are chasing isn't just a temporary hit, like a quick paycheck, but something permanent that outlasts you.
So your loop never hits a dead end.
Precisely. But this requires a very specific mindset about resilience. The author states, you don't lose when you fall, you lose when you refuse to stand back up.
Okay, I actually want to push back on that through the lens of biology, because when we fail, when we completely mess up a project or lose a major client, how does this dopamine loop actually help us? Doesn't a massive failure just cut off the dopamine supply and leave us totally flat?
You'd think so, but if you are truly addicted to progress, failing doesn't just make you sad, it creates a massive neurological deficit.
A deficit.
Right. Your brain expects a hit, and it gets nothing. So standing back up isn't merely an act of willpower. Getting back to work is your reward system violently demanding a return to baseline.
It becomes a biological mandate.
Exactly. Your brain says we are in a critical deficit. We need the hit of a small win immediately to survive this. Failure actually triggers the deepest parts of your survival instinct to get back to the grind and fix the problem.
So it's not that these highly successful people don't feel the sting of failure, it's that their craving to fix it is biologically stronger than their urge to quit.
Yes. It is the broken thermostat demanding heat, and the only way to get warm is to solve the problem.
The mechanics of the hunger are identical, whether you are in the depths of a destructive cycle or building a legacy of light. It is entirely about mastering that dopamine pivot.
Absolutely.
So let's look at the whole picture we've painted today. We started deep inside the brain, looking at the basal ganglia and how it can act like a broken thermostat, turning down its own sensitivity until it demands a constant influx of reward just to feel normal.
Which is terrifying when it's misaligned.
Completely. But we saw how this exact same biological loop, the craving, the effort, the hit, and the calibration, isn't just the machinery of addiction, it is the fundamental engine of human greatness.
Yes.
We saw it in Lewis Latimer, squinting in the gaslight, clutching secondhand tools, refusing to stop until the carbon filament was durable and his parents' legacy was secure.
We've realized that the engine of self-destruction and the engine of world-changing greatness are the exact same machine. And that is the ultimate realization for you. If you have ever felt that inner hunger, that persistent, relentless itch that makes you restless when you aren't moving forward, you need to understand that it is not a flaw in your character.
No, it's a God switch.
It's your deepest biological machinery begging to be pointed at a purpose. The only difference between a destructive cycle that burns your life down and building a legacy that changes the world depends entirely on the seeds you choose to plant and what you choose to feed.
Which leaves us with one final thought to mull over today. We know the brain is blind. We know it doesn't judge the moral value of your goals, it just responds to the reward.
It turns up the thermostat based strictly on what you feed it.
So if your brain is biologically wired to become hopelessly addicted to whatever you repeatedly reward, what small, seemingly harmless habit are you rewarding today that might be secretly programming your dopamine loop for the next decade?
Cried to Atlanta, from Lagos to Long Beach. Same prayer in the throat when the rent come due each week. Mama kept the passport tucked next to the old keys. Stories in the suitcase, salt in the palm trees. My uncle says, speak clear, let them hear where you from. So I lace every line with the drum of the drum. We were scattered like seeds till we grew from the cracks. Now our names hit the roof and they can't put us back. Hear that call in the dark, it's the whole world talking. One voice, many scars, still the same heart knocking. We are the voice of the diaspora. Say it loud, say it proud, say it for the long haul.
That's the frequency, fam, the knowledge we impart. From the Chi-Town fortress to the diaspora's heart. We about to sign off now, hope you caught the high vibration. This ain't just a broadcast, it's a global conversation. So when we hit the airwaves, make sure you locked in tight. We'll be back on the signal, bringing truth and light.